Hi guys, it's Kat. I wanted to talk to you guys about something because I've got some shit on my mind and I'm in the headspace of making changes. And I feel like because this is likely going to be the last video I upload of the year, this is a good time to put this out there and to make it very clear, and to, I guess, kind of draw a line in the sand and to start the new era of what I'm trying to create on YouTube. I'm changing a lot as a creator, and I wanted to talk to you guys a bit about that stuff. So you guys know that I've been a YouTuber for 17 years. I started a YouTube channel when I was 15 years old, and when I started that, I was really doing it from an emotional headspace. I was living in a really conservative area where I didn't have a lot of spaces to be myself. And YouTube became my first kind of place on the internet where I felt free. And for that reason, YouTube will always be a really important thing for me. It'll always be a very important platform. But I've kind of come to recognize that I've had not the most healthy relationship with YouTube. And YouTube and what it means to me has really shifted over the past couple of years. When I started YouTube, I didn't think of doing YouTube as a job. I didn't think of YouTube as a thing where I was even wanting to be known, right? I didn't want to be a YouTuber. I didn't want to be a person who was recognized or anything like that. I just wanted to express myself. And, you know, I've had a really hard time making YouTube my full-time job. And what I've often struggled with is the reality of YouTube being the thing that I've done the longest in my life and where my head is currently at now with what I'm doing here. And so I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about that. Like, if you've watched a bunch of my live streams, you already know a lot of this because I've talked about this. But I've been doing a lot of thinking and processing of what we're doing here. And I've kind of come away with those conversations with myself with a lot of understanding about the kind of creator I want to be moving forward. You guys know that I moved to LA in 2017. And that was an interesting process for me because when I was living in Orange County, I was with my ex, and, you know, the conversations that I was having were very different than the conversations I'm having now. Because I've been on YouTube for so long, for the longest time, I felt like I was one of the only people like myself creating content about the things that I created content about. I was one of the only trans women on YouTube. I was one of the only feminists on YouTube. And I decided to create content about both of those things. And then later also about race. And I felt a sense of obligation from that particular phase of my life. And that emotion really, really knocks heads with my survival instincts, right? So, because, you know, a lot of you guys know that the only reason I do YouTube full time is because when I first was trying to make money in this world, I dealt with a lot of transphobia, right? I transitioned fairly young, relatively young. And when I was younger, trying to get jobs, it was pretty common for me to be laughed out of the place of employment because of the disconnect between my appearance and my federal documents. And that was hard for me to handle. Let's just say that. And so I kind of developed this mindset of, you know, just in general, there's just in work and so many other things of no one's going to make space for me, so I need to make space for myself. No one's going to be welcoming to me, so I need to do for me. And in so many ways, that has been a positive thing that has been good for me, right? But as part of that, I have a tendency to bite off more than I can chew. I have a tendency to overwhelm myself. And because I've become so used to not relying on other people, I have not relied on other people to make everything that I do on my YouTube channel happen. I had a really rough October, and October was the month where this all became really clear to me, that I was relying on a survival mechanism that no longer serves me. So I'll just tell you what happened, even though I'm working on a piece about this that will come out a bit later. So I was part of YouTube Black's 2022 creator class, which means that YouTube gave me a little bit of money so that I could create stuff. And one of the things I wanted to create was a series about me learning new things. And one of those new things was burlesque. And I went into that burlesque journey really kind of thinking that it wasn't going to be as altering as it ultimately was. Offline, I've been doing quite a bit of community organizing, which I'm going to talk a bit later about. And one of the things I've been doing is I throw these fundraising events for the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center. And at these fundraising events, I have burlesque. And the challenge I gave myself was to learn a burlesque routine in a month and perform it at one of my events. Never done it before. It was definitely like a challenge of confidence and things like that. And you know, it's not that I walked into it thinking it was going to be easy, but like it was more like the approach that we had was one that really shifted me, and I was not expecting it to. And it kind of led to me having so much introspection. So I won't get too deep into this because, again, I'm making a whole piece about this. But for my burlesque education that I had, I sat down with one of my friends who is a burlesque performer. And the way that she likes to teach burlesque is very much examining of your own trauma, and specifically looking at these different archetypes within erotic movement. And part of exploring these archetypes is being in touch with your body. And sometimes part of that is disconnecting your mind from your body and feeling what feels truthful through your movement, right? And I think I just hadn't had a moment in a really long time where I had sat with that and thought like that. And something that I hadn't really done a lot of is ask myself what my body wants, ask myself what I want, you know? And I know that that sounds really strange, but it's, I think, just part of how I've had to be, right? And so, you know, I had a lot of interesting experiences while I was trying to explore this. And while I was trying to explore this, I was also attempting to do new things because I had a little bit of a budget. I was trying to hire other people, and I was trying to basically film this documentary about me learning burlesque and then have it all edited and uploaded by Halloween, right? This is the this is the delusional part. You know, I was like, I'm going to film an entire documentary about me learning burlesque in a month, and edit it and upload it by the end of October. And by the way, this event was in October. And by the way, I was also running an event, right? And I'm not, you know, because I'm so used to just taking on so much, I didn't really stop to examine that maybe I was giving myself too much work. Maybe I was overwhelming myself. And even though I said I was going to hire other people to help me do this shit, I did not really do that as much as I should have. And so basically, I spent all of this time filming footage and, you know, going through the own personal self-reflection things that I was going through. And then I did the performance, and the performance went to shit for reasons that I won't get into in this video. But I was not happy with the way that it turned out, which is fine. It was my first time, whatever. But in the aftermath of it all, I really felt something. There was something that mentally happened, and going back to this idea of checking in with your body and knowing what your body wants, I hadn't really done that, and I realized that because I have such a survival thing, I'm just not used to being honest with myself about what I want and what my body needs. And I didn't really feel it all until my boyfriend and I watched Kubo. Kubo, for those of you guys who don't know, it is a stop motion film. And, I went to school for animation, and it was really, really beautiful in terms of animation, but it was also story-wise just a fucking tear jerker. And I just could not stop crying throughout this entire fucking movie. I mean, from the time it started to the time it ended, I did not want to stop crying. And my boyfriend turned to me, and it was and he acknowledged that, with the whole burlesque thing that I did, I hadn't really allowed myself to cry. I hadn't really allowed myself to take a moment. I hadn't really allowed myself to feel those emotions. I bottled it up. And then when I watched something as silly as an animated film about, I only remember the film was about, but it was depressing. When I watched this little animated film, I fucking cried, and it was just one of those moments where I realized that I hadn't been checking in with myself. I hadn't allowed myself to really ask, what do you want, right? What do you need? And I needed to cry. And I think in so many ways, that's a good example of just how historically I've not allowed myself to be honest with myself and to really check in with my body and what my body wants. And, with the way that a lot of things have been happening, with Club Q and with all this legislation happening around the world, I've realized that I need to have more of those conversations with myself. And I need to not be the kind of person who doesn't acknowledge when I'm in pain or when I'm upset or when I'm hurt. Because you know what? Realistically, through my life, because I've had to sort of move through the world in this way, I haven't allowed myself to acknowledge pain. I haven't allowed myself to acknowledge stress. I haven't allowed myself to acknowledge fear, right? Because acknowledging those things for myself historically has been unsafe, right? It's been unsafe for me to say, I'm weak, I can't do it, or I shouldn't do it, right? And historically, I've not been able to accept help from other people. Historically, people have left me. Historically, I've been rejected. Historically, I've been closed out. And because of that, I can do what I'm doing now, where I make money doing what I like to talk, doing this thing, where I talk about the shit that I care about, right? Or the shit that I'm passionate about. But that's not a good headspace for me to always be in, right? That's not a good space for me to always exist in, because it allows myself not to be real with myself. And I've been just having so many conversations about this YouTube thing I do. And I came out with some realizations. Biggest one being that I don't really like defending myself. And it's not that I'm not capable of it, because I am. As you guys know, I am. But being a Black transgender woman on YouTube, a lot of it's defending yourself. A lot of it is defending every argument, every little, ism. And it can be a lot. And those of you guys who have been following me for a while know that part of me doing what I do has been harassment, right? I have been harassed basically from the first day I uploaded a video on this website 17 years ago. That harassment is nonstop. And yes, it's allowed me to build a really thick skin, but it's also normalized a lot of not quite accurately feeling some things when it comes to those sorts of things. I guess I'm being too vague, so I'll just be specific. And I'm going to talk about another blogger, and I know that that's probably going to start some shit, but who cares? I don't give a fuck. This was a really eye-opening moment for me. I don't even know how long ago it's been since this. It might have even been earlier this year, but my sense of time is very different since the pandemic. But a little while back, I had a spat with a YouTuber named Vaush, a streamer named Vaush. And this spat came on because I had made a post on Twitter responding to some of his blatant misogyny. And this was when he was being misogynistic towards J.K. Rowling as a way of, standing up for the trans community, right? And I've always been really confused by how people respond to Vaush because doing what I do, I have endlessly been the kind of person who has to watch everything that I say, right? I got to be so careful about the way that I express myself because everything I say has been dissected and misrepresented and, drawn into a certain, context where I just have to be really careful with what I'm saying, right? And so it was really interesting for me to watch someone like Vaush say something really misogynistic, like blatantly textbook misogynistic, and then see people like celebrate it, right? And I didn't really understand what that was about, right? I didn't really understand why that is, because I guess for me in my mind, I'm thinking, well, isn't this something we shouldn't be doing, right? And so I made a post that was like, hey, let's ignore who said this, completely ignoring the fact that it's Vaush, because I know that there were people that like hated Vaush. And that wasn't really what it was about. For me, I was just very confused by how misogyny can be used to defend trans folks. That was where it came down to. And I wanted to ask people if they could help me understand it because I felt out of touch. I've been a YouTuber for so long, I've been a blogger for so long, and I've felt for so long that I can only express myself in a certain way that it was confusing to me to see so many people applaud what I registered as just blatant misogyny, right? I won't get into everything that happened in this situation, but long story short, Vaush decided that I was harassing him, right? He decided that I was obsessively invested in him and was attacking him, despite the fact that I had started the whole conversation by saying, ignore who posted this. Let's talk about this. Because I was just confused by the tactic of why is misogyny productive in advocating for trans folks, right? And then I got into all of this bullshit on Twitter, right? And if you followed it, you know already what happened. Vaush and I years ago sent some spicy messages back and forth. And because he was going on his page and acting like I was obsessed with him, which I certainly wasn't, it's just funny. I mean, I'm so on my own like little island. I don't like the part of my confusion around Vaush was the fact that I don't watch his content. And so I was just confused by why it like works for some people and why some people applauded it and why it was so popular, right? But he was convinced that I was obsessed with him. And then, I came out and mentioned that we had sent spicy messages back and forth. And then that turned into an accusation of me sexually harassing him. It was a whole like thing, right? And it was so, the reason why it's a turning point for me was because from my perspective, I went out of my way to say, hey, let's not attack this person. And it was still perceived as an attack. And you guys know or should know, because I talk about it so much, that, I'm from a very conservative area. I've lived in conservative areas for most of my life. And when you live in those sort of environments, you become really used to doing this thing where you are not quite aggressively standing up for yourself. And you're so used to figuring out a nice way to say something so that you don't sound like a jerk, right? Because when you stick up for yourself as a minority in a non-minority space, you just will end up being on the receiving end of people attacking you or digesting what you're saying as really, really pushy and angry, right? And so because of the environment that I'm from, I'm so used to, I'm gonna, downplay myself, or I'm going to phrase this differently, or da 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 da. I'm so used to doing that thing where I'm careful about the way that I say something, because I don't want to be accused of being angry. And I certainly wasn't angry. I certainly wasn't obsessed or anything like that. I just was curious about the tactic, right? But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. And that led to me receiving a shitload of harassment from his fandom. And it just kind of really nailed home to me that I was doing this thing where I felt obligated. I felt obligated to really politely talk about this, or politely address an ism that demonstrably harms me. Like, I have a lot of feelings about misogyny, because misogyny has really negatively impacted me. And so when I see misogyny and it's a reality for me, it's not something that like I can register as like a positive leftist thing. So for me, it's like, so why are we applauding this? Why are we celebrating it? Like, it was just very confusing to me. And I came out of that with some, maybe some stupid conclusions, like, hey, maybe trans people are more misogynistic than I thought, because I just was so confused by all of these people like just being okay with the misogyny. But that's not really what we're here to talk about. Ultimately, what I recognized is that there's no way for me to be a creator on YouTube or on any website and also be an open trans Black woman, and not have someone somewhere misunderstand, misinterpret, or digest me as an angry person. It's just not possible, right? And I think for the longest time, I had stifled my work, because I was like, well, I want to, especially in those conversations where I felt obligated, I want to be heard. I want to be respected. So I'm going to, wear very polite makeup. I'm not going to have colorful, crazy hair. I'm going to change myself. I'm going to, become, because that in my mind was the way that I would be respected and heard. And through that, specifically, I realized that that's not the case. I've never really wanted to be a person who buys into the idea that because I'm Black, because I'm trans, because I'm a woman, people perceive me a certain way, and that's, again, kind of part of me being from a really conservative area. I was really used to, within these spaces, people seeing me as one of the good ones, right? One of the nice ones, one of the ones who wasn't too crazy and angry or whatever. And that shifted me quite a bit. And it allowed me to be more tolerant of things I shouldn't have been tolerant of, right? And coming out to the city, living the way that I've lived, I've really started to understand how being in that kind of environment allows you to not quite accurately call out harm, right? That respectability politics is kind of all about making you feel like you can't quite accurately claim it, right? I know that J.K. Rowling is a piece of shit, but I also understand that telling women to be silent is deeply misogynistic. And I know that that has led to so many women not being able to call out and draw attention to the things that harm them. And of course we can, and I'm not really interested in debating this, because to me it doesn't matter. Of course we can say, oh, he was being sarcastic, oh, he was joking, da 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 da, or it was, as he says, and many other people say, tactical misogyny, right? But and you're probably correct. Maybe he's not really a misogynist. He just plays one on TV. I get it. I understand. But like, to me, don't like it. Not a fan of it, right? But it also made it clear to me that this white creator, like a lot of other white creators, has a degree of freedom that I feel I don't, right? He can say the fucked up shit. He can say the offensive shit and still get points for being on the left, still get points for being progressive or whatever, and I just don't, right? Like and I think I just put myself in a position where I was like, you know what? I don't want to offend anyone. So like, there's definitely been content that I've not shared with you guys because I was so afraid of not offending people. But in all reality, I feel kind of stifled by that, right? And also in all reality, I don't really like being the kind of person who limits myself in that way. And so I came out of that situation understanding that there will always be people who fucking hate everything that I say and do, and that there will never be a way for me to be a person that people universally like or celebrate, right? And I think that for a while I was really afraid of breaking away from some of that stuff because I guess still was coveting this idea of being one of the good ones. And what I've been struggling with is, as we see all of this stuff happen with, legislation and, people actively advocating for a society that excludes transgender people, I've really had to do a lot of re-examining of my energy. And I've realized that I've talked about this shit for 17 years. I've defended myself for 17 years. And the only place I really do that is online, right? Like, I'm not the kind of person who in my daily life defends themselves. I don't. Some of these conversations for me have been more stressful than they were worth. A lot of these conversations for me have, more often than not, negatively impacted me mentally. And I don't necessarily see that as something I should be doing anymore. Something I keep coming back to is that I have not for a really long time been making content about things I actually actively enjoy. A lot of the content that I make is about me criticizing something. And it's not like I don't like doing that, because I do like doing that, right? But I remember how I used to be on the internet, where most of my online, digestion of content was about things that actively enriched my life. And I want to get back to that. I feel such a, it's interesting. As we kind of return to what feels like the mid 2000s in terms of like blatant, outright homo and transphobia, I kind of feel this desire to return to that headspace where I was more creative and more free and had less of a concern about what people thought of me. Because those were the days of my life where I felt I was the most in touch with my true creative self. And I made things that I liked, and I actively curated the internet to be all about things that I enjoy and like. I've had enough arguments and debates with strangers to prove that I'm capable of doing that. I just don't care about it anymore. And when I think about just not caring about it, I think about how much content I've made that I just don't give a fuck about, Like, I do not care about J.K. Rowling, okay? I don't care about how transphobic she is. I get it. We've talked about it. I'm tired. I don't care about a lot of the things that I've made content about. Or at least I care a lot less about them right now in this particular moment. And so going forward, one of the things I want to do is get away from feeling obligated to making content about things I don't care about different bloggers that I definitely don't care about. I also want to get out of feeling like I have to satisfy my audience in terms of, oh, Kat, so-and-so said this, can you respond or react to that? I don't really want to do that. It doesn't make me feel great. It doesn't give me a feeling of, enjoyment for what I'm doing here. And I have to enjoy this. I have to enjoy this. Through that experience I had with Vaush, and honestly, every other similar experience I've had before it, I've learned that there's no version of myself that is always going to be universally accepted and loved. So why hold myself back? You guys don't get it. I think some people have noticed it. It's funny. Caswell likes to comment on some of my videos sometimes, and he calls it out like, he points out sometimes when I wear like a very like normative look, like going to meet my family kind of look, because there are times where I calculated it to that degree, where if I'm going to talk about something crazy or intense, I'm only going to wear, I mean, kind of like what I'm wearing now. Nothing crazy, no crazy eye looks, no extreme makeup or whatever, because that's how I thought. I thought like, I need to do that. I need to like downplay myself. And actually it's funny. My boyfriend points this out too, because I was working on this documentary for this project that I was putting together. And one of the things I wanted to do was get B footage of me doing karaoke. And I dressed up in a very, I don't know how to describe it. I was really comfortable, let's just say that. And he was like, bitch, you don't dress like that. Like you put yourself together, you dress to the nines. Why are you trying to be this like understated version of yourself for YouTube? For what? It's not genuine, right? It's not real, right? And I'm so glad that I have him in my life and that he can point that sort of thing out to me, because I'm so used to doing it that I didn't realize I was doing it, right? And what I want to start doing on YouTube is be more fucking genuine. And it's not that I haven't been genuine. It's just that I was so deeply invested in creating a version of myself that, and it didn't work, wasn't harassed or didn't, deal with bullshit, that like I didn't allow myself to be myself in so many ways. And as an extension of that, I didn't allow myself to create what I wanted to create. And so moving forward into the next year, I really fucking want to do that. And I also want to expand what I'm doing. You guys know I've been on the Tickety Talks and on Instagram now, so much more. And through doing that, I've kind of realized that I don't have to put everything on YouTube, right? Because I've been predominantly a YouTuber, I have mostly created content for YouTube. And there's so many other types of content that I can create. That's part of the problem. I have too many things I can talk about. I'm a writer, speaker, illustrator, and animator who is transgender, polyamorous, BDSM, I'm kink positive, sex positive, I just have too many things to talk about, right? And I've really started to hone in on that stuff. This past year was really experimental, and I've definitely figured out what I want to do. And I've also accepted that not everything I want to do is going to be on YouTube. And so I know that you guys haven't gotten a lot of content recently, and the content you've gotten has been kind of like, low quality content like this. But even though that's been the case, like, side note, I've lost a lot of subscribers. Like I've lost like 3,000 subscribers. I don't know why, but I've lost a lot of subscribers. I'm okay with that because I feel like we're entering into a new era, and I know for a fact that a lot of you guys aren't going to like it. I know factually that a lot of you guys are not going to like what I have to come, because moving forward, I'm not going to be invested in not offending you. I drink alcohol. I smoke weed. I say tit, fuck, shit, and titty. I'm not a child-friendly channel. I'm not even a channel that I'm not going to stop high schoolers from watching my shit, but like, I'm not saying that I'm not going to be making content for high schoolers, and that's just what it is, and that's part of the problem too, is I'm a much more fun person, I think, offline, and I'm trying to capture that a lot more. Speaking of which, this is another big thing. So my offline life is very different now. The pandemic really shifted a lot of things for me. I came out of the pandemic with a very different feeling about relationships. I'm polyamorous, but I finally entered into a phase of life where I realized that I wanted a primary. And for the past, I guess, year and a half at this point, I've had a primary partner. And as we've spoken about several times on this channel, I am submissive. And within my relationship, I certainly have a role that I'm performing. And that role has required me to spend a lot of time doing things for him and at his place and things like that. And that's shifted a lot of my time and energy for creating YouTube content. And I don't resent that at all. And that's part of why it's working that way, because I'm not resenting it. It's something that feels really natural and normal to me. And so I I feel really good about it and I really like it and I like doing that. I like performing that role. I like being in that role. So I'm happy and comfortable performing it. And so, yeah, I've had that change, and it's a change that feels good to me. You guys have to understand I'm 32, okay? I'm feeling those nesty vibes more and more and more, and I don't mind it, but it's definitely meant that I have slightly less time to create content. But with that in mind, it's also meant that the time I spend, I want to be quality time. And that's made me really think about, actually, interestingly enough, creating more high quality content for my YouTube channel. So, and then also on top of that, there's another thing about time management. I am so much more seated in real life, community organizing. In the pandemic, in the quarantine, I decided to do some organizing in terms of sex positive communities in Los Angeles. And now I have a social group in LA. And what we do is we get together, we socialize, and we also raise a lot of money for charity. And I have devoted a lot of time to that and a lot of my resources to that. And I like community building on here. It is definitely something that I want to continue to do and do better. But I have kind of prioritized offline community building because I feel, my mindset, and maybe I'm wrong, and I hope that I am wrong about this, is that we are edging closer and closer and closer towards fascism. And as that happens, I feel more of a desire to be closely connected to people offline and to build community for people offline, to foster safe spaces for people offline. And especially with the way things are right now, I feel really good about doing that in a way, doing that in silence, I guess you could say. Meaning that, I'm not going to advertise a lot of that stuff through my YouTube channel or through, any other platform that I have, because I don't want for it to be a situation where, because of me and because of, my own, treatment on the internet, I'm on the receiving, the spaces that I'm creating offline, are now our targets, right? I have to think about that because you guys, there's people showing up with guns, right? To certain places, and to be clear, like I said, I'm not a child-friendly person, so there's no kids in anything I'm creating, but I still know that there are people out there that are just going to try to do that for every single, queer gathering. And I'm not interested in making it easier for people to do that. So a lot of the stuff that I'm doing in terms of organizing and advocating for stuff is not going to be stuff y'all are going to hear about. If you live in LA and you are in the know, you will eventually run into my social group because it's a pretty large social group in LA now. And it is what it is. But I've accepted that that's not going to be a priority of mine, right? But what it also means is that I'm taking more time away from creating this stuff to do that stuff, because that stuff has become more important to me in a lot of ways. And I feel good about it, much like my primary partner thing. I feel really good about that. I don't feel bad about that or strange about that, right? The interesting thing about where I am in life right now is that more than probably any time in my life ever, I feel really equipped to take on my blog head on. I feel really good about expanding my podcast. I've been trying to get into hosting. So a lot of things I'm going to be creating for YouTube are going to kind of be like in the interest of pursuing that, right? But I feel really fucking good about that, I feel really good about where I see things going. And so what I'm going to say actually is, moving forward from this point, you guys are going to get content, but it's probably not going to be as much content as I used to post. I'm going to be devoting a lot of my time to creating, y'all are still getting True Tea. True Tea is still going to be a thing. In fact, I've already filmed the first 2 months episodes. So y'all are going to get that for sure. And that's going to live on this channel and on my podcast. And yes, we will be doing the call-in shows and things like that. But I'm also going to be working on a video essay series about LGBT representation. And it's going to be about films that I used to watch way back when. And I feel really good about that idea. And I'm signed to Standard. I'm a Standard creator. And what I'm imagining will happen with that series is that a pretty decent portion of it will be on Nebula. Because Nebula, unlike YouTube, has really allowed me to have a little bit more freedom with the stuff that I want to create, especially with some of the conversations that I want to have. And so I'm going to take advantage of that freedom that I have and do something like that. I actually, more than any time in my life, feel really equipped to pursue a lot of the things I want to pursue. But going back to, my point of my survival mechanisms and stuff like that, I've realized that I don't need to do it alone, right? So one of the things I'm going to be focusing on in the next year is hiring people. I'm no longer going to be just katblaque doing everything. I'm going to have employees. I'm going to have editors. I'm going to have people on my team, right? It's funny because I feel really strange even thinking about that because I'm so used to doing everything myself. But I've accepted something I heard a long time ago, which is that, if your dream is so small that you can do it by yourself, you're not dreaming large enough. And a big issue that I've had on YouTube has been that I have really ambitious goals that I've been trying to do by myself. And that does not at all serve me. So I'm going to be trying to build a team. I'm going to say this in this video because I feel like the kind of person who watches this entire video is probably the kind of person I want to work with. But if you live in the Los Angeles area and you are a film person, you're a sound person, you do any sort of editing and stuff like that, I am very interested in hiring you. So reach out, contact me. I think the best way to do that would probably be Instagram because you can send me an Instagram message. But yeah, that's probably the best way. cat_blaque is my Instagram, by the way. I'm specifically going to be hiring a personal assistant. That's something that's really big. I just need someone else to help me do both YouTube shit and the community organizing shit that I'm doing because it's just too much for me to do on my own. The survival part of me is having a really hard time delegating and letting go of control, but that's the only way I'm ever going to expand. And I just have to do that. I have to do that. So in summation, I am going to be I don't even feel like I'm very politically correct, but we'll just say that in misunderstanding of the term, be a less politically correct creator. I'm going to be more authentic. And I'm going to get help doing that stuff. Going forward, you guys will get higher quality content, but you'll probably get less content. And I think that that's okay. I think it's okay for me to upload less frequently. Because I've been such a long-time YouTuber, I have just gotten in the habit of creating content that, I upload quite frequently. And who knows, maybe if I start hiring people, maybe I can do that. Who knows? But I'm expanding is basically what I'm trying to say. I'm expanding beyond this YouTube channel. I'm expanding, beyond this thing. And I'm letting go of some of what I feel was holding me back. I have to do that. It's the only way that I'm ever going to be able to move forward. And so I feel personally like there are a lot of really exciting things to come. You guys are going to hopefully see me on other people's things more. I have a lot of excitement behind that. Like I said, I'm trying to get into hosting and things like that. And I feel pretty optimistic about it. I'm letting go of placing YouTube in my mind the way that I did many other things. And that feels really, really fucking good. I want to take a moment to really thank the people on my Patreon who have, listened to me talk about this a bajillion times. Some of y'all, because I do like these work updates on Patreon, and I've really kind of been going back and forth about a lot of this stuff. I've had, a lot of what I'm saying now is the result of many conversations I've had with my Patreon people. And I finally really feel like I've reached a good balance. I feel positive about what I'm doing in terms of, how I'm going to do this stuff in the environment that we're in right now in this country. And I'm feeling happy about it. I want to have more fun with what I'm creating. I've been doing a lot of shorts content because that's been a way for me to have more fun with what I'm creating. And I also can make content about more than just the stuff I usually talk about. And that feels really fucking good. So yeah, it's the end of an era in a way, but for me, it's opening up another chapter. And I'm really excited about that. I'm really, really fucking excited about that. So here's what I need from you guys. Like I said, I'm working on a video essay series about LGBT films and representation. I already have a couple of things on that list. And part of the series is going to be interviewing other bloggers and things about representation and how they felt about it. So I would love, first of all, if you are a creator who likes to talk about that stuff, if you're a YouTuber that likes to talk about that sort of stuff, let's connect, send me a message, leave a comment, you know, because I will be calling certain people in for certain topics and things like that. And also from my audience, I want to know, what are your favorite LGBT films? What are your favorite LGBT films? Oh, here's the parameters though. It's LGBT films that are older than 15 years. That was the parameters for it. LGBT films that are 15 years older than, you know, because that's kind of where I want to be in terms of the conversations I want to have. So yeah, I feel really excited about stuff. And I want to thank everyone who stuck through all of the various changes on my YouTube channel, because here's how I'm feeling. Because I've done more examinations of like how much time I'm spending doing things, I can kind of now, I have a better assessment of it. And so I know that we're going to be here for a while. True Tea is going to be a monthly thing. And eventually you guys are going to get monthly video essays. And I feel really good about that. And that's going to be where I live on YouTube, at least. I may do some streaming here and there. I don't really know. I'm still sorting out how I feel about streaming. A lot of the things I want to stream are just like me doing video reactions to like silly videos. Let me know if you guys like that idea. But yeah, I'm trying to have more fun and to enjoy myself. And I do not want to spend any more time repeating myself about transphobia. You know, they be hating us. They do be hating us, you know. They do be hating us. And I feel like that's the most we can say at this point. They do be hating us. I want to start having more fun and talking about positive stuff and like, you know, enjoying myself. I'm not going to be interested in defending myself. You know, we're not going to be interested in clarifying myself. People are always going to hate. They always going to hate. And that just is what it is. And I am happy that I finally recognize that. And I'm no longer going to try to like shift myself around so that that doesn't happen. Some of y'all are not going to like me being more blunt about things, but y'all are just, I don't know, unsubscribe now is what I'm saying. Unsubscribe now. So anyway, I feel so good about this and I'm so excited about where things are to come. So hopefully you guys will continue to follow me on that journey, and thank you for being patient with me. So on that note, I will talk to you guys later. And this used to be my old sign out, but since I'm like making a webcam video, I feel like saying it again. I want you to always remember and to never forget that you're beautiful and you're loved. Bye.